You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We love MotoGP. Hello and welcome to Missed Apex MotoGP Podcast. This is a show put together by MotoGP fans pretending to be experts. We aim to have a race review show ready for a midweek commute. We may just be punters, but we love to talk. Violent highsiders, torn leathers and surprising results. The German Grand Prix at tiny Sachsenring offered enough entertainment, but just not for the win. Well, not on Sunday anyways. Another Marc Marquez double marks the halfway point of the season. There's no real title fight, but fresh competition might enter the scene quickly. I'm your host, Jules, and today I'm joined in the virtual chat by some fellow MotoGP enthusiasts. First up, we have our token northerner, Danny Henny. What's up?
Hey, Jules. Lots of talking points on this one, so looking forward to getting into it.
Cool. And then we cross the Atlantic Ocean to speak to our tire-obsessed trumpeter, Matt Trumpets.
It was Michelin in the conservatory with a candlestick.
That's nice. And also nice, the voice of our smooth-talking Texan, Adam Rosales.
Hey guys, looked like a fun weekend to be out there. Wish I could have attended, but yeah, not that good of a race, but the sprint was definitely one to talk about.
Definitely, and we will. Without our regular host, Carl Power, because he's away on holiday and we wish him a very nice stay. Let's move over to our weekend overview. We entered the German Grand Prix weekend with some positive news from the Honda side. We had Luca Marini back in action after his Suzuka 8 hours practice crash, which saw him injured pretty badly, and he was back a bit sooner than everybody seemed to think. And what a comeback it was. We'll refer to that later on in the episode. Not back in action was Somkhat Chantra, the LCR rider who injured himself in an off-road training incident. More surprisingly, we also had to be without Enea Bastianini this weekend because he was out with a pretty hurtful, I reckon, appendicitis. Declared fit, on the other hand, we had Alex Marquez, our runner-up in the championship. He broke his hand in the Dutch TT 2 weeks earlier, but on Friday he was declared fit to race. Some other news from Honda going into the weekend was a confirmation by KTM that they are losing their engine guru, the 60-plus-year-old Kurt Triep. And that name might not ring a bell to many of us, but he is the mastermind behind the KTM engines. And as we all know, for a couple of years already, the KTM on a long straight line, the top speed is also all of the time in their hands. So Honda are Europeanizing some more after already securing the services of former Ducati and KTM guy Romano Albesiano. And it just says something about their ambitions for the 850cc era from 27 on. Anyway, back to the now. We started the weekend with obviously Marc Marquez in the lead of the championship with 307 points. His little brother, well, maybe we are not allowed to call him his little brother, but his brother Alex trailing by 68 points, and Pecco Bagnaia already a massive 126 points behind. All right, so the practice and quali on Friday and Saturday. It was a bit of a two-faced occasion, I think. The practice on Friday saw us on a dry track with the practice session in the afternoon, deciding who would go to Q1. Q2 directly saw the top 10 within 0.3 of a second, which was very competitive. But then on Saturday, the rain hit the track and it saw us with a completely different field and a different way of going about things. During the FP2 session on Saturday morning, Marc Marquez was faster, and we saw Maverick Vinales surprisingly in second spot. He then survived Q1 went into Q2, and he had a very nasty high-sider going out of turn 2, dislocating his shoulder, breaking a bone in his shoulder. Guys, that looked pretty violent, and a shame for Maverick, who had been performing pretty well and pretty steady for the last couple of races.
Yeah, it was kind of a foreshadowing for the entire weekend. You didn't necessarily recognize it right then, but yeah, I am sort of new to this track, and I enjoyed the elevation change, and the shortness of it is so different to everything else we came to, and it did seem to sort of promote some people forward and some people backwards, but yeah, that was a scary looking crash, and the first of many, to be honest.
Yeah, he kind of kicked off the whole parade of riders going off. One more in a worse state than the other. State of Maverick at this point is that he got operated on today, on the Monday, and the verdict is that he will miss the Grand Prix the coming weekend in Brno. So that's a lot of bad luck for Maverick, who had been was showing real pace in those wet conditions on the Saturday. Also showing a lot of pace was Johan Zarco on the Castrol Honda. He survived Q1 as fastest and then put his bike on P2 during Q2. Adam, was that a surprise to you to see Johan go this way in those wet conditions?
I mean, it is, but it isn't. Zarco is just old man Zarco at this point. It seems like he doesn't get in his head too much. He just makes that Honda work somehow, especially in these mixed conditions. I don't know what he does, but he does something that's just magic.
Yeah, and we saw this like in Le Mans. You're exactly. Sort of like, I'm like Zarco, yeah, whatever. And then suddenly he just comes alive in these conditions. And it was so amazing to watch him. Because really, he was putting Marquez, he was putting the pressure on him. He was not having any of it. But I do recall just fundamentally the thing about wet tracks is they always neutralize a lot of power advantage, which is Honda's weakness. And sort of, I mean, you've got to find it appropriate, right? That they've gone and stolen the guy making potentially the strongest straight line engine, because Honda used to have the engine used to be everything for them.
Zarco's just a really smooth rider when you watch him out on track. He's lovely. He keeps momentum of the bike through the corners. Excellent, especially in the wet conditions. And I think he's riding high from the confidence from what he got from Le Mans. And I think he just saw an opportunity and grabbed it with both hands and went for it. And what a performance he put in. I mean, it put him second on the grid. And big things to come was the hope for the event.
Yeah, it was a pretty exciting qualifying, obviously, because it was wet, and Q2 was a lot wetter than Q1 even. We had an interesting second row with Morbidelli on P4, Pedro Acosta on the second row, which was really nice to see. Completed with Alex Marquez, who did a really nice job given the situation he's in. And Bezzecchi was P3, and just when I think everybody thought, oh, is Zarco going to do it? Is he going to nick pole position? Well, obviously we had one guy who thought otherwise, who came out on his red bike and pipped Zarco by 1500ths of a second to get pole. After all, his one of many poles that he had this season, and it set us up nicely for the sprint. So sprint was a bit drier than qualifying in the morning, but still it was wet tire situations. And Johan Zarco, who set that amazing qualifying time with a medium front and a medium rear, and decided to start on those tires as well, while the others around him put on a medium front and a soft rear, and that would play a big part in his performance. But the main thing about this race, the what set the rest up was Marquez going wide after the start into turn one, and he didn't go wide a bit, but he went wide by quite a lot, Matt.
Yeah, and in fact, it occurred to me that a simple way to make this whole season a lot more entertaining is just give him a long lap penalty if he gets pole. That just seems to solve it straight away. He just drove straight off the track, was demoted immediately, and in conditions that let the other riders really make his life difficult. And I don't want to give away too much from the race, but it's becoming increasingly clear the difference between free air pace and pace behind anybody. It was like blatant this weekend, and I just am grateful he screwed up his start on Saturday, so we got to have some fun.
Yeah, it reminded me of the older Marquez races back when he would do some crazy stuff in his first couple of years, 2013, 2014, where you see him maybe have a bike issue or something. And I think this time he got a really good start, but just outbraked himself. It might have been cold brakes, something where he just missed his marker. But luckily, it seems like turn one, it's pretty raceable. There's some different lines going in and out. And you saw it throughout the race and the weekend where it almost looks like they go wide, but it really sets up into the next corner just in a different way. But he could still carry momentum. And I don't know how he did that with 20 other bikes behind him, but it just crazy.
Yeah, what it was, like you say, he run wide at turn one, and then I think what surprised me was how quick he got back into the pack. I thought he was going to be shuffled out when they were going through the corner and be about 8th, 9th, 10th maybe, because it's so difficult to file back in when you've made that mistake, especially at the start of the race. I think he did quite well to get back in the position he was in, but as Matt said, I expected from qualifying and watching him through the weekend to blow back through to the front, and really, thank you that he did make that mistake, because it made the race quite interesting to watch what he could do towards the end.
Yeah, and don't forget, you're at the front. He had a good start. He was ahead, but you've got a full tank of gas, your tires and brakes, everything is cold, and the surface is slippery. To me, this is like sort of a classic. I've got my breaking point, but he's also so sensitive that he starts to go and he's like, nope, definitely not. And he just sort of carries his momentum outwards. But I will say, like, you're all like worried about the filing back end. Well, it's really easy if you just assume everybody else is going to get out of your way because you're riding a Ducati.
What I will say as well is, watching him, you can tell he's so much mature this year. Now he's got the bike underneath him, because just picking up on Adam's point, historically he would have made a crazy lunge. Even the commentators said during the race, any other time you can see him holding him, reserving himself, not making that move, because when he was in the pack, you go in, he's going for this, and then he'd like have a look, go back in, take a little bit longer. 2013, 2014, 2015, Marquez would come from 3 bikes back and just chuck it at you, pray to God that he's going to make the corner somehow and go after it. So it was an interesting watch from that as well, because he could have been a lot more aggressive, but you can see he's just enjoying having the bike, and he knows he's got the advantage. He can take his time to come through the pack and pick the moves that he needs to do.
I wonder if he's a little bit more cautious because he doesn't want to lose the front arrow if he, hits somebody. And just kind of goes to show how much he's a little bit smarter about that now. I don't know. It's hard to tell, but it seems like there's a lot more, like you touched on the point about aero dependency or dirty air. It seems like maybe that's influencing the way he rides a little bit more.
Yeah, and don't forget, you've got to watch out for your tire pressures in traffic, although obviously in the wet and cold, that's probably less of an issue. But I will say, like, I'm going to bring it up right now. As good as the race was, it would have been a lot better if we'd had the Zarco we saw in qualifying turn up to the race.
I will just add as well before we move on, the Mark's updated start procedure, if anybody's noticed. He literally pulls up now, and first thing he does is have a look down and go, is it engaged, yes or no? And then gets back on the bike. Every single start. Brilliant.
He's got like a little pink post-it right on the fairing.
All right, guys. So, well, clearly Mark limited the damage. He actually came out P5 after that, going wide, and the race was on. Not on was indeed Johan Zarco's rear tire. The medium rear, how much it helped him earlier in the weekend, it didn't do anything for him in the sprint, guys. He dropped from P2 on the grid to like P7, P8 after one lap, and it didn't go any better from there on. Matt?
Okay, so I actually just now came up with a total theory to explain this, which is that in qualifying, clearly you can go out and build the temperature into the tire. And once that tire was warm, it absolutely positively worked for him. But I feel like that either the climatic conditions changed in terms of track temperature or just the other ones, the air temperature, or he wasn't able to have it warm enough at the start for it to do the job that he needed to do. And once he didn't have that grip, it was impossible for him to build it in the circumstance he found himself in. And it really is a shame. And I know he said that the team's going to look at it because it may not be his fault. They could have changed how they blanked off the brake cooling and stuff like that. It might have been too much cooling because it's a sprint and not just a qualifying lap and heavier things. The tiniest little thing could be wrong and totally mess that up. But it is really a shame because if you look at the qualifying, you're like, oh, there was the guy that was really going to make Mark work.
Yeah, and especially as he won Le Mans in pretty similar conditions, we were like, oh well, maybe he can make Mark's life miserable, really give him a fight for the win, but it didn't really go that way. What also didn't really go his way was Frankie Morbidelli. I mean, that was a dirty crash. It was such at high speed. I think it was turn 11, the penultimate turn, and he just shoved through the camera's view, and it was like the gravel. It didn't slow him down. He just skidded across it and went over his head a couple of times. I think he heard it. He landed on his head like 2 or 3 times. Adam, what did you think of that?
Yeah, so typically when a bike goes cartwheeling, it goes end over end, but this time it was both the bike and the rider, and it looked just way too intense. Something you don't see too often, especially at that circuit. Normally you see, the waterfall type low side where they just lose the front, and this was just a brutal high side. And one thing that really surprised me was the leathers. I don't know if it was because of the airbag or if it was some type of part of the leather that got snagged on the bike, but it just tore and completely broke the leather zipper. And that looked scary whenever that happens. And then once he was kind of just laying there, you could see him trying to move his arms, and that's just like, am I alive? It looked like that type of reaction out of him.
I can't even imagine how disorienting that must be. But when I saw the replay, it looked like he was both a low side victim and a high side victim. It's like the bike slammed him low side, and then when it started to cartwheel sideways, it literally just dragged him over the high side with it. And I when I saw that, I was like, oh man, that is awful. Yeah,
I thought it was going to be a red flag, but turns out that he didn't even hit the air fence.
And it's so unfortunate for it to happen to Frankie, because he had this severe head injury 2 years ago, which kind of dented his whole season last year. And he's one of the few riders who is actually out of contract after this year. And then he experiences these things and you feel bad for him. But then on the other hand, last couple of races, he had these Frankie moments, riding into, I think it was, I don't remember exactly who it was last race, but then he had a long lap penalty in I think the last 2 weekends. And you feel like, Frankie, because I imagine he could miss Brno this weekend. and it just feels like it's going to be difficult for him to retain that seat or maybe any seat, which would be a shame because it's a very unique and friendly guy to experience, so to say. Anyway, what did go well was I think Pedro Acosta qualifying 5th and finishing 4th. He seemed to be on it this weekend so far, Matt.
Yeah, he did, and this was like the false hope of KTM. You're like, finally, he's back in his element. It's tricky conditions. The bike is looking more competitive. They're starting to qualify better, and the whole top of the field actually did well for themselves. You're saying who really went well? I thought Bezzecchi did amazing. It was really not just amazing keeping it upright, not just the Aprilia looking good and clearly conditions that suited it, but he had one of the first, we had the Bagnaia thing, but that was the first intermanufacturer proper battle we've seen for a lead, especially even at the end of a sprint. And Bezzecchi, he was giving no quarter. He took everything the bike gave him to defend that position. And it really, it was very sweet. It was a very sweet moment, given how long and how hard Aprilia has been running up that hill.
And yeah, we might run a bit longer than usual on the sprint beat, but it was the highlight of the weekend, we reckon. And we can't discuss the sprint without mentioning Pecco Bagnaia's horrible Saturday. He was nowhere in qualifying, ending up at P11 just in Q2, just because Vinales didn't start anymore. And then on the Saturday in the sprint, it was 12th position for him, and he was nowhere, and he was lapping 2 seconds slower than his teammate up front. It was just going from bad to worse, Danny.
Yeah, we were saying in the group, weren't we, with Bagnaia, it's the same story over and over every weekend. I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that, I'm working on this, I'm working on that. His problem for me is, as I said in the group, he is trying to beat Mark, and he needs to realise that currently, in current form, he cannot beat Mark. He's trying to attain something he can't go after currently. So he needs to focus on beating everybody else step one, because he's at risk of losing third in the championship if this keeps up. His form's not hot. He's getting beat by riders he shouldn't be getting beat by. And Alex is doing an excellent job. He's actually being outshone by Alex currently. And Bagnaia's a very, very good rider. He just has to mentally be with it, because at the minute he's kind of beating himself a little bit. Just get on top of your game, try not to set the big spoils, little steps, and then I think he'll come back to the front and get some form going again. But he's just got to get out of this rut that he's in, trying to find something that currently doesn't exist.
I mean, definitely next time I need a performance coach, I'm going to hire you, Danny, because that, I think, is absolutely the correct prescription for him. He needs to stop thinking about beating Mark and focus on, please set this bike up so that I can be on the same pace as Alex. Because if I can be on the same pace and confident in the bike, I can beat him. And then once you're there, then you can start thinking about, okay, so now I've got the bike here. How do I get closer to where Mark is? But also, I mean, I will, as much as I was excited to watch Jorge win last year, I will absolutely defend Bagnaia. He has not lost his ability to ride a motorcycle in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think he's lost his desire to win everything. But I think Ducati have not, somehow they've not given him the tool that he needs to be able to do that. And, you can judge him as a rider as a result. But it's the bike and the rider, and if the bike ain't right, I don't care who's riding it. I mean, how much did we watch Marquez break himself trying to win with a Honda, right? If the bike ain't right, the rider ain't going to win with it.
It's one thing I've always kind of thought about. I know we shouldn't really mention a big bad Formula One, but it's Max Verstappen and Marc Marquez have been very parallel, like their whole career. It's weird. It's like they could just make the bike work. And I feel like right now, Pecco Bagnaia is the way Checo was the last couple of years, where the bike is there, somebody's winning on it, but for some reason, this guy can't make it work. And I feel like it's part of the development, but also part of the team. But I mean, Danny, your point, it's just mental. It's got to be mental. There's something there that just isn't clicking.
Yeah, it is. I think people underestimate how much you can beat yourself up mentally when you're into racing. It's little steps you've got to take. I remember when I started, obviously not bikes, but in the karting, and your first step is to like get a top 5, then you get on the podium, then you want to win. And Matt kind of summed it up. He's got to work on being second place consistency. Once he's second place consistent, then he can look at getting first place again. But currently, he's just got to get some form. And he totally, as Matt said as well, he is an excellent rider. And it's him who is giving him his own troubles, I think. It's all mental. Once he cracks that, he'll be back on the pace beating Mark. Because he has flashes of brilliance where he looks like the old Pecco and he looks like he's got some form. And then all of a sudden, it just, as the race goes on, he slips away. And it's a bit heartbreaking to see, to be fair.
But it is, I appreciate what you're saying, and I think it is true-ish. But if I am, I grab one of these trumpets, plug a mouthpiece in, and I can do this. If you gave me a different mouthpiece and a different trumpet, I'm still a really good player. But I might not be able to do the same thing because the physical connection to the sound I produce has been so significantly changed. I'm going to have to take some time and adapt to it. And I think we've seen Pecco, and maybe the team too, working to return something he feels is missing, rather than, just having a wake and saying, okay, we ain't going to have that anymore. Blame the engineers. It's all their fault. But you don't have that anymore. So what can we do with what we do have to get you someplace closer to where Mark is now? I feel like it sounds like he at least is making noises in interviews with the press. Like, okay, I'm beginning to accept that I'm not going to get what I had with the 24 bike. And I'm going to need to look at what the 25 bike might be able to offer me in recompense. Where can I make up? Because I don't have the feel. I can't do the kind of braking that made me competitive last year, because I don't have that feel. So we need to sit down and look at every track and look at all of our maps, our ECUs, everything we program, and say, where can I find that time with things that I can do with this bike?
Yeah, and maybe the first steps towards that or signs were there this weekend when Bagnaia finally rode on a Friday with the chassis, the new chassis, which is not that new anymore because Marquez has been riding it all season. But then still he decides it needs a bit more testing, and he's still running the old Aero while Di Gianantonio and Marquez are running the new Aero package. And you can see him falling behind, and even Di Gianantonio also this weekend again. So yeah, let's hope, I feel we say this every week, but let's hope he finds his way back. Like Mark did in the last lap of the sprint race. Let's wrap this up, but he was coming from P5. We could slowly see him getting closer to Marco Bezzecchi, who was leading the race. And then, what did you think, guys? Was Bezzecchi going to make it, or was it inevitable for Mark to overtake him?
I thought Bezzecchi had got it. When I looked and he was got like 0.7 to go with so little of the race left, I thought he's got this in his pocket. No way is he making that up. Not in that weather condition, etc. And I was actually hoping Bezzecchi would take the win, because we need a bit of, as much as I like Marquez, we need a few different winners coming up. So yeah, it was exciting, but yeah, age-old story, isn't it? He just gets there and takes it away when we're all tantalising, waiting for it.
Yeah, he just needed one more lap of maybe Morbidelli not crashing in front of him, and it was a done deal. I think Bezzecchi did a fantastic job, and I was really impressed because Aprilia's had the update. I've seen the rear seat arrow change. They've been working very hard to improve that bike, and they were off by a lot with this year's offering, but I feel like they've really dragged it back. And so I was excited to see that the sort of proof of concept, at least on a track where the engine wasn't going to be the as dominant a feature, especially with the track being wet. But oh man, it's what a battle! It was just nice to see a battle, period, between two different manufacturers, two really good riders who clearly respect each other, and you gotta feel good for Bezzecchi. I mean, you know, he did not ask for any of this, and yet he's managed to come out looking good. So yay him.
Yeah, I thought Bezzecchi had it, but then I couldn't tell if Bezzecchi's tires were falling off or overheated them, or if Mark was just doing a Mark and just came back out of what seemed like nowhere, because I thought that he was just kind of trying to maintain and thinking about championship, considering, you know, the stuff you've heard about what he says lately is, being a little bit more tactical. But then he came out in the interview post race and saying basically he just instinct took over and just sent it. And it's pretty awesome to see.
I mean, he did almost fall off at one point. So yeah, you know, I think he might have he might have had that moment and been like, oh yeah, maybe I should have been a little more careful because I was already ahead of anyone who was actually going to beat me in the championship. But I think at the end of the day, there were just too many left-hand turns.
Definitely the case. Right, guys, let's go to the race review, because all else this episode is going to be a sprint review only. So let's go to our talking points about the Sunday. So the wet weather on Saturday, it went away for the Sunday, and we actually had some sunshine and a dried up track. But the wet conditions from the Saturday definitely affected the Sunday race, it seemed, because obviously a lot of rubber has been washed away by the rain, and a lot of riders got into trouble with especially their front tire on the Sunday. We had so many guys going out. We already missed 4 riders at the start because of the guys who were out of the weekend already, and the guys who were a victim of the Saturday circumstances. And then in the end of the 18 starters, only 10 finished, which was, well, not a record low, but it had been since 2011, I think, Phillip Island, when only 10 riders reached the finish, and only 14 started then. And when I tried to read up about why that was, I came across the fact that it was that race where Jorge Lorenzo lost a bit of his ring finger in a crash during the Sunday warm-up. But that was a different time. Anyway, a lot of guys going out, and not the least, very early in the race, Pedro Acosta, after that nice sprint result and qualifying result, he crashed out in turn 2, and that was obviously a real shame, because it's not his season, Adam.
Yeah, that's also kind of a strange place to crash. You really don't see many crashes there at turn 2. It seemed like something wasn't working on the bike. The way what kind of came to my head earlier, Danny talked about how smooth Zarco looked. Acosta, it's like something was up with the front suspension when you go off throttle or on throttle. It seemed like it lifted just a little bit too early when he should be trying to keep load on the front so that it can carry the speed through the corner. And it just seemed like it just completely went away from him. Once that happened, it's a shame he couldn't get back up and get some points, because he would have, regardless of where he finished, as long as all he needed to do was finish. But yeah, I want to see him do more, and I want to see KTM do more. But I feel like, it was a good weekend for Brad Binder, because I feel like he's kind of the low-key top KTM, wasn't really in too much of the TV coverage, but he somehow made it work.
Yeah, Acosta complained that he finds the current KTM like it has a really small window for error, and I think that may align with what you just said, Adam. That that once he feels it going, once he starts feeling that he loses the front, there's so little room to like get the bike up again or correct that error. And because it wasn't a fast corner, the turn 2, and it felt just like he almost slid off in slow motion, and it was a shame. Last season, he had this great rookie season, and around this time, halfway, he had already 5 podiums, and this year we haven't seen him out there at all. So a lot of guys went off, notably Digi, running from P2. Turn 1, it was like in a window of 3 laps. I think it was lap 18 to 21. All of a sudden, we had the TV director going from one replay to another rider going off. And Digi said, like, yeah, I went in too deep a bit. My front started locking, and there I was. And it was actually Bezzecchi who inherited position 2 again from Digi, who went off like 2 laps later, exactly the same spot, because he said, I was being too careful. I saw Digi go, so I thought I'm going to be a bit more careful into turn 1. And he said, like, so I didn't have enough pressure on the front. The rear tires started to grip, as we know by now that the Michelin rear tire grips a lot, and it just pushed his front further away. And that was a shame. Zarco again went off, which obviously made his qualifying result result into nothing again. And we had 10 guys reaching the finish, and we could talk about the guys not reaching the finish line, but what does it say about the 10 riders who actually did in these conditions?
It says that they were more fortunate than their counterparts who didn't, because this is interesting. Like this really pinged my radar, and I refused to take a yellow flag for it. But the thing this really reminded me of was the Silverstone race in Formula One, where all the tires exploded. And then when we went back and looked at it, the reason they exploded was the tires were being run at incorrect pressures, incorrect cambers on the wrong sides, because they were directional tires. And so they weren't really designed for the energies being put through them. We are at the dead end of a regulation set that is heavily aerodynamic. We're seeing corner speeds that we've not ever seen in this sport. And we have a tire manufacturer that made a rear tire that is the most fantastic thing on the planet, and then just said, oh, well, the front tire is kind of hard, so I'm not going to bother. Good luck. And so now we have all these weird pressure regulations. We had a colder day than I think a lot of people expected. And you have a track that's almost left-hand turns, and then turn 1, which is the heaviest braking zone, is a right-hander. So you've got both convective and conductive cooling that's sucking heat out of that front tire. You have a rear tire that, if you're not dead perfect, will just simply shove you into understeer, which at least one rider said was what happened to him. And I'm just going to say that all the riders are very good about saying, oh, it was this specific thing about my setup, or like Bezzecchi's like, oh, yeah, I saw Digi crash and I was trying to be careful and that caused me to crash and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, fine. What's the commonality here? Commonality is that I think at this track, this front tire is not fit for purpose. That's why you had essentially half the field not finished. Now, I know this means I will never be invited to a paddock, and that's fine. But I can't, just from a treetop, from a forest level view, I look at it and I think, look, if you've got that many riders saying it was some finicky thing with the front of my bike at this kind of a turn, when we know that we don't have a front tire that really matches the back, then it's hard for me to overlook that as being somewhat causal in the carnage that we witnessed on the Sunday. Now, I don't think anyone was ever going to catch Mark, because he got off to a good start and he was in the lead. And I think in clean air, there's really no catching him on that Ducati. But we had some amazing midfield battles spoiled. We had several podium contenders. It would have been just as good almost to see Bezzecchi on the second place, or did you? Oh, I was so excited for him. He was like there,
pretty bummed about that one.
And KTM, who's struggling for survival, lost all but one of their riders.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I know there's blame to spread from rider to engineer and I understand it's guessing. But at the end of the day, I think Michelin just needs to kind of hold up their hand and say, yeah, we kind of contributed to this too. So sorry, guys.
Yeah, it can be a coincidence. And they did bring the asymmetric front tire because you have all these left-handers, but still it didn't help a lot of the riders on the Sunday. And indeed, KTM, Acosta could have gotten second, but he didn't. And also Baz didn't on the Aprilia. But I think we got quite a good case to say something about Baz being on the rise together with the Aprilia.
What I did like until I didn't like it at all was that in both the wet and the dry, at least on this track, which admittedly you've got shorter, you don't have the long runs that really benefit the Ducati, but at least on this track, we're starting to see the outlines of them being competitive in different conditions, which like for the Yamaha, for the Honda, it's always very specific conditions. But here, finally, once again, Aprilia has kind of stepped up to we may not be quite as good, but we are at least going to give you some hassles, and no matter where we are.
There are a lot of good signs. We got Bezzecchi lauding Aprilia's development out in the open, and we got Massimo Rivola, the team manager. He said we are highly optimistic for Brno after this Sachsenring performance. And if you look at what Bezzecchi's done after first quarter of this season, he had 38 points. And he was P13 in the standings. And now, another quarter further, like halfway through the season, he's got 130 points. So that's almost 100 points more. He obviously won Silverstone. He almost he had 2 podiums in the Netherlands. Almost had 2 podiums in Germany. So, and he's now the best non-Ducati rider in the standings. And I think that reflects how Aprilia have been going about things this season. And believe it or not, Jorge Martin, after testing this last week in Misano, his special coming back from injury test, even he was optimistic and positive, and he said he was feeling great, and we did a great job. So it's apparently we again instead of I. And Aprilia said he gave the same feedback as Bezzecchi and Salvadori about improved balance since he last rode it in Qatar.
I think on Bez and Aprilia, they're definitely improving, like you say. I think their target, it goes back to steps again, their target is if he can beat one Ducati by the end of the season and get in the top 6, that would be an incredible result for Bezzecchi. I think if he can hold that, get in there, hold it to the end of the season, that'd be a great result. Set them up for next year. Looks like Martin's potentially going to stay with them, so that'll give them 2 strong riders going into 2026. They've only got to get a little bit, compared to the Ducati this season anyway, a little bit, and they'll be right in the hunt challenging for the championship next season. So fingers crossed they continue doing the development. And as you say, Bezzecchi's on quite a bit of form at the minute, and it's great to see because he just brings a bit of spice to the races. So fingers crossed he carries on.
And I think the Aprilia seems to work best on like medium to high speed tracks, where I feel like if the weather, I feel like stays fairly consistent through Brno, I think that he could be there. I feel like he's probably got a good shot for a podium, and I think it's going to be another one between the Italian bikes. I don't think Honda or Yamaha are going to be there, but I'm curious what the rest of the season is going to be like, because I feel like I expect a little bit more out of Yamaha at this track, but it seems like the Aprilia just works well through corners. It seems like it just flows really well, and it's kind of taking that spot out of the way the Yamaha characteristics are on their bikes.
The problem with Brno is it's got long straights in it. So it has some quite fast corners, but it has some real long straights going down into there where the power of the Ducati is going to be mega. for the Ducati. So I'd be amazed if it's dry anyway. I'd expect Ducati domination. If not, and it rains, then I think the Aprilia could be the bike to beat.
Well, this is actually one of the things that I love, because a lot of what you're talking about is going to be about what kind of minimum corner speed can I carry. And if we go with the side body aero on the Aprilia being very efficient and good, and they can carry a high enough speed. So if the approaches to these long straights are medium and high speed corners where Aprilia has a speed advantage at their minimum velocity, then maybe it's not quite the disadvantage we think it might be. But if they're slow corners, then yeah, I gotta agree. Ducati's acceleration is just unmatchable.
So, guys, do we believe in Jorge Martin and Aprilia pairing up again? Because we all know the whole saga, but it seemed that since the Dorna CEO Carmelo Espeleta spoke out publicly in Assen 2 weeks ago, like, we're not going to allow riders to be signed by different teams while they're under contract with another, or maybe even when a court has decided instead of the teams among each other. It seemed that the whole Jorge Martin campaign to leave Aprilia, probably to go to Honda, has died. And Spanish reports now say that Jorge Martin is ready to stay with Aprilia for 26 as well, and maybe move on to Honda after that anyway, but we'll see that. But what could Jorge Martin do if you look at what Bezzecchi has been doing in these last 5-6 races?
Well, what I will say, Jules, is it's probably better asking me for the lottery numbers if you want than asking me what Jorge Martin's going to do with Aprilia for next season. We'd have better luck. But I think it's just that it's not a coincidence that he's looking to go to Honda to get out and go and do something there. I mean, I think he's a bit of a madman. Why you'd go to Honda currently, no one knows. But I think what it's done is Bezzecchi's got some form, and it's shown what results you can get. And Bezzecchi winning Silverstone, it's like, I think that's made Martin think, well, actually, this project has got legs, it can run. He's probably got on there, had a crash, seen they're not really doing much at the start of the season, and thought, I want out of this. Honda has showed him some promising results on some data or something. Then Bezzecchi's kind of hit a stride to get it going, and now he's thinking, well, actually, because he no doubt thinks he's better than Bezzecchi. If Bezzecchi can get some solid results and win races, imagine what I can do on the bike, and I think I could go at it for the championship, potentially.
Well, I love this. If I was in his position, the only data you'd have to show me is how much money are you spending on this next set of regulations. And that's the team that I'd want to be on. And the snatching of the KTM engine chief alone demonstrates that Honda has decided that this is a place they want to spend money and be successful again. And so like, I get that from a 10,000 foot perspective. If I'm looking to the future, well, you look at who Honda's acquiring, you look at how they're behaving. They're not behaving in the manner that led them to Marquez leaving. They're behaving in the manner that, made them champions in the first place, which is like, we have to take a look at why these people are successful. And we have to adopt these methods and measures so that we can be competitive again. And we're Honda, so we have like literally unlimited bales of cash to throw at it, which is, like it or not, generally speaking, a definitive factor in how competitive you're going to be. But as to the Aprilia thing, yeah, I mean, I think it's literally, he might have just got on the bike and said, it doesn't feel like it wants to kill me anymore. And so I don't need to have this fight now, do I? I can take my time and see how things start to shake out a little bit because of the nature of my contract. And I hated that he was going to abandon Aprilia just because they looked like they were poor. But on the other hand, I mean, if I'd been on that bike 3 times and had 3 crashes like that, although the third one, he got hit by a bike, so that made it a lot worse. But even still, my confidence might be dented a little bit, if I'm being honest.
And that's where I think the big problem or mental thing is that his last couple experiences were that he got hurt on his bike. And it's obviously not working because he knows Bez is not slow, but he knows he's faster. And so he sees that Bez looked lost. I mean, the first 5-6 races, he didn't do anything. And Martin kind of did himself a favor almost by not having to race that bike. And I feel like letting Bezzecchi and Salvadori kind of develop and put the bike where it is now is giving him the confidence to, okay, I'll jump on it. I'll see what I can do. And I think as long as if he comes out the bat and gets like a top 10, I feel like that'd be great. That'd be great for him. And if he somehow gets a podium, it's going to be scary. And I think that if he somehow manages to do that, it's going to kind of cement himself at Aprilia as, one of the new riders. And I think if the Honda thing is true, that will go away if he can somehow get that Aprilia working for him and he doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, and especially as in the first few races, we were pretty positive about what Honda was showing, and they were improving regarding last season, which isn't that big of a miracle because they were so slow last season. But maybe that has stalled a bit, and that has put off Martin maybe, and being on that bike last week, and he was really sounding positive, and he said I was going faster through the day without crashing. Let's just see, and I'm very curious to see what he can do this weekend. Would be awesome if he can mix himself into the top 4 or 5 pretty soon.
Finish the race. Let's just finish the race. Let's remember what Danny, our performance coach, said earlier. Let's just finish the race without falling off. I think that's a great starting point.
Fair play. Let's go to our last topic of today, another Marquez double. We just witnessed Marc Marquez getting his 4th double in a row, sprint and Sunday race win, and his 7th out of 11 races or race weekends this season. The numbers are dazzling. It was actually his 200th Grand Prix in the Premier Class this weekend, and his win rate is 34%. Podium, getting on the podium 60% of the time. It's like this guy is really an alien. He already beat the record of winning most sprints in a season now, winning his 10th, and the previous record was Jorge Martin winning 9 in a whole season, 23. So it's just crazy. And it made me think, are we having another 18 months of this, because his Ducati contract runs up until 2026 as well? And are we witnessing an old school Marc Marquez era, like in the mid 2010s or even the end of 2010s? It just feels like this is a bad moment for Liberty Media to step in and make this sport, which is promoted as the greatest, the entertaining sport of the world. What do you guys think? Is this reeking of Marquez dominance for multiple seasons like we witnessed already 10, 15 years ago?
Currently, yes. Someone needs to step up and come and jump in, because if no one starts to step up, I mean, it depends what the regulations do when they're going there. That might have a bit of an impact in, but if the bike he is on is anywhere near the front, then currently what we're seeing is Marquez, as we said last year, was working miracles on that Gresini compared to what the big boys on the Ducatis were doing. And, I like Marquez, I never did, but I'm a fan of him now. But I kind of like the story of where he's been, what he's had to go through to come back. So I will look forward to him winning the championship this year. But I do hope that it doesn't turn into domination, because as much as I like seeing him win this season, we need some competition, and there's enough good riders on the grid that have the ability to step up. I personally really want Quartararo to come back. Something about Quartararo I just love his spirit. Him to get involved. I'd love to see Digi involved. It'd be good to see Bagnaia back in it. Imagine Martin on a competitive Aprilia. If we could have a good 4 to 5 riders battling for it, it'd be incredible over the season. Not going to happen, but if we could, it'd be amazing.
Here's Danny asking for MotoGP world peace. I mean, yeah, come on. That ain't ever going to happen. But I do want to mention the Liberty thing, because I remain one who's, I'm astonished they were given this opportunity with their other business interests, because that certainly hasn't happened in the past. But I'm going to turn it around. When you ask the question, well, given this apparent Marquez dominance, which we can only project to the end of this regulation set at best, well, when did Drive to Survive happen? In the middle of Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes being just crushingly dominant. And they took that and turned it into like just a gold mine. So yeah, I'd say if there's anyone you actually want taking over your commercial interest right now, it would be Liberty, because even if Marquez just crushes everyone next season, they'll probably find a way to make that entertaining. And honestly, and the thing that I really do love about this is, like you said, you can already see the outlines of Quartararo at Yamaha with their one-lap pace. You can see Zarco in the wet with the Honda and say just, oh God, if they just had an engine, what could they be doing right now? And they just got an engine chief. And Aprilia, who were the only real competitor to Ducati last year, with last year's world champion coming back from an injury. I mean, these narratives just write themselves. It's going to be epic, even if it just winds up Mark winning everything again. It's just the nature of the sport. It is, you can't look away from it.
And I don't know. I feel indifferent about seeing another rider dominate again in this case. I mean, he makes it fun to see, especially whenever he makes a mistake like he did in the sprint. Mark is just one of the greats, one of the most fantastic and visually entertaining riders that we'll probably ever see. I don't want him to dominate. I want there to be a little bit more, better battles for the lead. Hopefully not just his brother, which is still just surprising. I don't know what's going on there. But seeing Aprilia, KTM up there, I think would be great for the sport. I want to see Yamaha make a comeback. I want to see Honda make a comeback. I want to see everybody being able to mix it up. And a couple years ago, I feel like maybe when the Liberty thing started, you didn't know who was going to win each weekend. And that's when, MotoGP is a little bit different now compared to what it was 2 years ago. And for the Liberty thing, I feel like there's a lot of indifference about it. I know that there's a lot of people who follow motorcycle racing who absolutely hate things like Formula One, but you got to take into account the respect that they have turned Formula One into. They've made it this huge sport. They know how to market it. Dorna isn't the best at that, and it's been kind of dormant of a sport for a few years. I could go on and on about this, but I feel like Liberty is not necessarily a bad thing. I feel like, it's probably going to impact ticket costs, but I feel like it's going to get the riders a little bit more money in their pockets long term and make them a little bit more of kind of a storyline and things like that.
And at the end of the day, let's not forget, for all we love the racing, the teams and the manufacturers have to feel like they're getting value out of it, or else it disappears. And that is something Liberty will do for these teams, for the Hondas, for the Yamahas, for the Aprilias, and for the KTMs that are on life support. I mean, imagine that KTM team suddenly tripled its value. Someone's like, oh, I'll buy it for 3 times what you thought you could sell it for. Well, that's going to lead to better racing, more money being invested in the riders and in the engineering, and everybody comes out a winner as a result of that.
As you say as well, I mean, I weren't a big fan when Liberty first come into the Formula One bit with the ideas what they got in that, but they've worked wonders. And you can think, they don't even have to think of a name, do they? Ride to Survive goes well with what they've got. And I think, in my opinion, MotoGP has by far better characters compared to the drivers. Could you imagine episodes? You've got Acosta, you've got Miller, he would be nuts. Binder's a funny guy, Bezzecchi, Bagnaia, Marquez. It's just brilliant. I think it'd be an excellent series to watch. And can you think some of the storylines were going? Could you imagine that Zarco winning Le Mans, how much they'd hype that up to high heaven, make it feel like it. The Silverstone, the Ducatis are in trouble. They hit the deck, they come back to the start, they go to the start, everybody's in the pits. It would just be a good watch. The only thing I wish they wouldn't do is they don't make it up as much as what they do with some of the storylines and some of the comments. But yeah, I think you've got to go into it, remain a bit curious, and they've done a good job. They've got a good track record, and if it's increasing the commercial value of teams, and like you say, Matt, for KTM, they need a bit of extra income. I think it could be a good thing for the sport.
You got to think of it's not one thing everybody likes to talk about, but it's all about money. These teams got to be able to get something back out of this, and making the riders a little bit more, bring back the hero factor. These guys are all heroes to everybody. And especially back when it was, the two strokes, those bikes were monsters, and these guys would get hurt, risk their lives. I feel like that kind of needs to come back a little bit. And Dorna's not very good at marketing that. They kind of, everything was about Marquez for a while. Everything was about Rossi for a while. And they just kind of need to bring back the way F1 turned into like top 10 for points. They need to just change the angle on how they market things a little bit. And I feel like Dorna did something really good with the sprints because of the way that the sport works for motorcycles. And I feel like that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It looked bad at first because everybody thought that they were just copying Formula One, but actually they were copying World Superbike, which is another Dorna series. And I feel like Liberty might end up tying those two a little bit more. And I think that's also not necessarily a bad thing. I feel like it could be a little bit more of a production feeder class. I just hope that tracks don't change too much. I feel like with the motorcycle factor, they really can't. I feel like it might be good to bring in some new venues or some old venues back, and mix it up where you might get a combined weekend with World Superbike and MotoGP eventually. I feel like there's a lot of potential there, and we'll see what they do. But like you said, Danny, just stay a little bit more positive and optimistic about it. I think as fans, we have more to gain than we do to lose, I think.
Do you know what I really want to see come back? Because I don't know if you all feel the same, or viewers or listeners feel the same as well. Where have gone all the crazy celebrations when the riders win? I feel like
Top Right just did one at Donington this weekend.
Yeah, it's just like, where are they all gone? I remember when I first started watching, there were just celebrations galore. You had Rossi with his crazy things, you had Biaggi doing good stuff. Everybody, I hope Liberty coming back into it would get something like that going again. For me, I'd put a rule in. It's mandatory. You've got to have a cool celebration when you win the race. I don't care if you finish third. Somebody have a celebration. Because Martin, when he won the championship and did the Terminator, great idea. I mean, it weren't what you was expecting in the end, was it, bless him? But something, just give us summer. I think it was, for me, first getting into the sport, that was one of the things what really attracted me to it. I just loved all the crazy Rossi celebrations, what you got at the end of the race, because he'd won it. He didn't just go around and get off the bike. He went bananas, and had them all coming out, didn't you? So, yeah, a bit more of that for me. That's what I hope to bring.
I mean, I think we've seen a little bit of the Marquez doing this with the flag and Magellan. But here's the thing to consider. At the end of the day, in MotoGP, the rider makes far more of a difference, despite all the amazing engineering. And there is so much amazing engineering to be sold to the public. Despite all the amazing engineering, at the end of the day, the story is the rider on the bike, and the risk they take is far beyond anything we see in any other series except for maybe, was it Isle of Man? It's absolutely mental. And Liberty made their money for Formula One selling drivers' narratives. This is something that they cannot mess with, I think. And like you say, the ground is fertile and the world is ready to embrace this. The only thing that worries me, as someone who's a newcomer to this sport, is that a lot of people who are longtime fans will want to, I'll use the nasty word, gatekeep new fans. And can I just can I just say, give those people hugs, tell them the history they don't know of, and welcome them to your sport, because in the end of the day, we're all going to win if MotoGP makes more money and the teams can spend more on the racing.
And yeah, it's all about the story. The story of the riders, the story of the tracks, the story of the teams. It's all about the comebacks, what these guys have been through, how many bones they've broken, when they broke it. I mean, like one of the big things was Lorenzo at Assen, where he broke his collarbone on Friday in the wet, flew home to Spain on Saturday, got surgery with Dr. Mir, and was back racing on Sunday. And those heroic stories, I mean, they help sell the sport. They help make the rider the gladiators that they are, and things like that. I feel like the story is one of the most unspoken parts about following sports like this, because a lot of people, for example, F1, they say, oh, you know, a ticket to Silverstone is £900. You could go watch the World Endurance Championship for way cheaper. And it's like, yeah, but it's a great series, great cars, but I don't know the story. I'm not as invested as I am. And that's something that Liberty is able to do, and be able to build the story, sell, you know, a bit of a narrative and the narrative of the season, and carry it on. I feel like that's a big part that people don't really talk about. And like you said about the explaining it to a new fan, I mean, that's a good way to have a beer with somebody and make friends. Like you get to share this knowledge that you have about, like just now telling the story about Lorenzo 2013. I know there's a lot of people that don't know about that. And all you got to do is go on YouTube and you can find the crazy videos about it. And being able to, have a beer and explain those stories. I mean, that's always a good time.
Right. Well, now we messed up with Michelin and probably not going to get a Paddock Pass invite from them. Maybe after this, Liberty will will start chatting us up. Before we wrap up to the standings and our moments and riders of the weekend, if you like our show, then why not subscribe on YouTube or leave us a review on whatever pod platform that you use, Spotify or Apple, whatever. Feel free to. We love to hear from you guys. You can also email us at missedapexmoto@gmail.com or follow us on X, the former Twitter. The handle is at missedapexmoto. So the standings after this weekend. Obviously, Marc Marquez extending his lead, 344 points already, with Alex trailing at 83 points, and Pecco Bagnaia nearing the 150-point deficit at 147. Special mention to Marco Bezzecchi entering the top 6 now, just behind Digi and Morbidelli. So to round up our show, let's go to Rider of the Weekend. Matt, who is your choice?
Oh, wait, you've come to me first. That feels like not giving me enough time to think about it. I mean, there's always the obvious one. But you know what? Someone I've never nominated before, and you'll be surprised, is going to be Aldeguer. Because he learned from his crashes on Friday about the terrors of turn 1 and the tire temperatures, and in the carnage of Sunday, managed to correctly apply that and just take the oldest racing lesson in the book, which is to finish first. First, you must finish, to heart, to do a very, very good job for himself.
That's a fine choice that I wanted to make too, but okay. Danny, who is your pick?
Well, I was laughing, I must admit, because I've just checked the notes, and as soon as Matt said that, I thought, that's Jules' pick, I'm pretty sure it is. So even though mine fell off, and I did put in the group, my rider of the weekend has just fell off, I'm going to give it him anyway, Bezzecchi. I thought he was brilliant, exciting, solid performance, and starting to hit a patch of form.
Yeah, that's a cool choice. What about you, Adam?
I'm going to go with Brad Binder. He's kind of the only KTM to get any kind of result this weekend, at least where it mattered in the points. Brad Binder, he kept it together. He got some TV time, and he just looked pretty good, I'd say, for where the KTM is right now. Kind of dragged it across the line, but kept it on 2 wheels. And that's what's most important.
in my absolute defense, I was looking at Moment of the Weekend, which had nothing in it.
It's all good. It's all good. I like how we surprise each other. You know, the obvious rider, of course, it's almost every weekend is Marc Marquez, but I really liked to see Luca Marini do so well, and I know about half the field crashed in front of him, but to get P6 in these conditions, returning after such an injury, it was just really good to see him up there. So let's quickly go to our moment of the weekend, which we all left completely blank in our show notes. So to help you guys out, I will go first, so you can think of it a bit longer. I think the moment that made the most impression on me, just to give Mark some praise, after all, was his overtake on Bezzecchi in the sprint, which was final lap, turn 1, which actually, like at the start, he went wide again, but somehow he got this momentum out of that turn by actually going wide, which we kind of referred to when we discussed the lap 1 incident. And he managed to, it was like everybody felt like, he messed up this overtake and Bezzecchi's going to win it. But then he just got such a ride, such momentum out of that turn 1 into turn 2 and made it stick. And I thought it was pure class. So, Danny, what's your moment of the weekend?
My moment of the weekend, I weren't too sure, so I'm going to give an honourable mention to Marini getting 6th, which is your rider of the weekend. However, I'm going to go for the moment when Mark was leading and the riders were catching him, and I think it got the gap down to 1.3, 1.2 or something. And I was like, game on here. This looks like they're going to come back at him. And he just put a lap time in and put about 5 to 6 tenths on them all. And it weren't a good moment of the weekend, because I thought, he's cruising. This is really disappointing me for the race. So mine is a bad one, because I got all excited thinking there was going to be a battle, and he just took the mickey. So sorry.
Yeah, he had so much left again. It's unfair. So Matt, did you manage to pick something for your moment?
This is funny. I actually had this one dialed in walking into it. And it comes to you would think after I talked about the sprint in such tones that it would be about the sprint. But no, actually on the Sunday when Digi crashed and he finally got back to the garage and walked in, and he was just met with this big old hug. And I was like, there was that moment, and you're just like, oh man, that's why I love this sport, because no, he's not getting the wagging finger and being yelled at for crashing another $1 million bike. He's just given a hug, because they know what that meant to him, and they know what he just lost. And they're like, no, dude, we are with you 100%. And that's just beautiful. That you just got to love that about sport. Yeah,
that was heartwarming to see, and it was so unfortunate for him. Such a good position he was in, but yeah, that's a cruelty of our sport as well. So Adam, what's your moment?
My moment was just seeing the crowd shots throughout the coverage of the weekend. It was the most attended German Grand Prix at Sachsenring. I like to travel to races. I like being there. I like being part of the crowd and seeing everything. And I get happy seeing, the people smiling in the crowd. And then on social media, you see, people meet the riders, just all of it. I just love to see that stuff and seeing how many people could go there, whether the weather was good or bad. I just feel like it's a solid turnout. And yeah, that's my moment of the weekend, is just the general crowd and vibe. All the smoke flares before the race too. I know some people hate it, but I love it. It's fun when you're there. Just as long as you see it at the other stand and you're not breathing it in.
Yeah, it was actually really good to see. Also because there aren't really any German riders at the moment to turn up for or to cheer for. But the vibe is pretty special out there. And the record attendance, again, it feels like we get that television graphic for every race nowadays, but still, it's a good stat. So on to our final stuff, the socials. Danny, where can our listeners follow or find you on the socials?
You can follow me on X at DannyHennyF1.
Alrighty. Adam, are you active on X or can we find you on some other place?
I'm mostly just on Instagram, at adam.grandprixtravel. Recently started a YouTube channel. I did a kind of a Q&A recently, answering some people's questions about traveling to Grand Prix in general. You can find me on YouTube as well with the same handle at adam.grandprixtravel.
All right, cool. That sounds interesting. Matt, you are on the socials, pretty much all of them on the same handle?
Yeah, because I'm that old. At MattPT55, go give me a search, say hi. And if you see me in a bar, buy me a drink, because I'll always be happy to have a chat.
We'll be back again in just 1 week already to review round 12 of the season with the Czech Grand Prix at good old Brno. First time in 5 years we go and race there. It's a really good classic track. As always, thanks for listening to Missed Apex MotoGP.